welcome to Medium with a Mic. I'm your host, Kari Bandle. Today I'm doing it. I'm going there. Today we're going to talk about something bold, somewhere a lot of people in spiritual and intuitive circles even won't go, not even with each other unless prompted. And I've been sitting on this episode for a while, and it probably won't be my last, but I wanted to do it justice. I wanted to come at it from every angle, spiritual, experimental, and yeah, of course, a little scientific too. So get comfortable and open your mind wide because today we're talking about extraterrestrial life, alien existence, non human intelligence, whatever language feels right to you. We're talking about the very real, very growing body of evidence and the very deep soul knowing that says we are absolutely, positively not alone in this universe. Let me start with something that has bothered me for a long time. There is an enormous amount of arrogance baked into the idea that human beings on this one little planet, in this one solar system, in one galaxy among literally billions, are the only intelligent life in existence. Like, really think about that for a second. The observable universe contains somewhere in the range of 2 trillion galaxies. 2 trillion, more than all the grains of sand on Earth. Each of those galaxies contain hundreds of billions of stars, many of those stars with planets orbiting them. And the prevailing thought for most of human recorded history has been, yep, just us. We're the only ones. That's not humility. That's the opposite of humility. That is breathtaking arrogance dressed up as skepticism. I almost feel sorry for those who laugh when aliens are brought up in posts. What an incredibly small way of thinking. And I'm not saying that to be harsh. I'm saying it because when you look at it from a cosmic scale, the idea that we are alone is actually the more far fetched position. The mathematics alone just don't support it. The sheer scale of what exists doesn't support it. And frankly, my lived experience as a psychic medium doesn't support it either, because I have spent years working between worlds. I work with the energies of people who have crossed over. I work with guides, with higher frequencies, with consciousness that exists beyond the physical plane. And I can tell you this: the universe is teeming with intelligence. It is layered and alive and full of presences we don't have names for yet. So when someone laughs at a post about aliens, and I see this all the time, what I feel from that person isn't skepticism. It's fear, wearing the costume of superiority. And we're going to talk about that too, because those are the people I'm most concerned about when contact becomes undeniable. For now, though, I want to be really clear about where I stand. I believe with every part of my being that extraterrestrial life exists, has existed for longer than humanity has, and is far more involved in our story than most people are ready to hear. Let's get into it. Something is shifting, and I think a lot of you feel it. The transparency around non human intelligence and UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is what they're calling UFOs now. It's been building steadily. We've had congressional hearings, we've had military whistleblowers, We've had testimony from credentialed people, pilots, astronauts, military personnel, intelligence officers, aerospace engineers, saying on the record that they have seen things that they cannot explain. Objects performing maneuvers that defy our current understanding of physics. Crafts with no visible propulsion. Speeds and directional changes that would destroy a human body. And what used to get you fired or ridiculed is now being said in front of the United States Congress and many other countries as well. I believe we are in the middle of a slow, deliberate disclosure. And I think it's happening in stages because the people managing this process understand correctly that if you just drop the full truth all at once, you get panic, you get destabilized, you get a world that can't function because it's too busy having a collective breakdown about everything it thought it knew. War of the Worlds, anyone? Some of you are too young to know that Hitchcock creation. So they're doing it in layers, a little here, a little there, enough that when the bigger revelations come, it doesn't feel completely out of nowhere. This is what I feel on a personal level, and I'm just going to say it. I believe more significant information is going to surface this year. I believe the transparency is going to accelerate. And I genuinely believe that we are closer to what I would call a first contact moment, something undeniable, something public, and something that ends the debate once and for all than most people think. I'm talking possibly next year. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not speaking as a prophet here, and I'm not going to be on a rooftop counting down. I'm sharing where my intuition and knowing and the information I've been sitting with is pointing to. And everything I feel says we are very close to a threshold. The veil between fringe conversation and mainstream reality on this topic is thinner than ever before. So pay attention. That's all I'm saying. Just pay attention. Okay, let's talk about something more personal, more experiential. I know a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people. People in my community, clients I've read for, friends, colleagues, and over the years, a pattern has shown up that I simply can't ignore. There are people, more than you'd think, who have never felt like Earth is their home. Not in the way someone might feel out of place in their hometown or their family. I mean, on a soul level, a deep cellular, this is not where I originate from level. They've always felt like they came from somewhere else. Some of them can tell you where that is. They know what planet, they know what energy, what civilization, what frequency they're tied to. Pleiades, Sirius, Andromeda, Arcturus, the list goes on. These are what many people call star seeds, souls who have incarnated into human form, but whose soul origin is extraterrestrial. And I've sat across from enough of these people, have felt what they carry, to know that this is real. This isn't a metaphor or a personality type. This is a genuine soul memory of origin. And here's where it gets really interesting for me because it connects to something much older and much bigger. I believe in the Anunnaki origin story. You know, the one that happened on their lab in Eden, Edin. For those who aren't familiar, the concept that runs through various ancient astronaut frameworks and some channeled traditions is that At a key point in human prehistory, extraterrestrial beings, sometimes called the Anunnaki, made contact with early humans and contributed to an intentional acceleration of human evolution, an infusion of new genetic material, upgraded DNA that bridge between what we were and what we became. When you look at the archaeological and genetic record, there are jumps in human cognitive development that are genuinely difficult to explain through conventional gradual evolution alone. The leap from Homo erectus to Homo sapiens involves neurological and physical changes that happened with a speed that still generates debate among researchers. There are gaps, there are mysteries. I'm not saying evolution isn't real. I'm saying, what if evolution got a push? What if we are seeded intentionally? What if an ancient culture described as gods coming down from the sky and shaping humanity was their way of describing exactly what it sounds like? Because here's what I know as a medium: consciousness doesn't come from nowhere, soul doesn't spring from a vacuum. We are connected to something much larger and much older than this single planetary experience. And some of us carry that connection more consciously than others. If you've always felt like you're from somewhere else, you might be right. Now, I want to talk about something that most people don't want to think about, not just extraterrestrial life out there somewhere in the cosmos, but entities that are already here, on and in this planet right now. Let me break this into a few different categories because I think they're distinct. First, the grays. The gray aliens, the ones with the large heads, large dark eyes, and small frames, are probably the most recognizable image of UFO culture. And there's a reason for that. The sheer volume of contact accounts, the consistency of description across cultures and continents and decades, it points to something real. These aren't mass hallucinations. These aren't shared cultural myths built from movies. Many of these accounts came before the pop culture imagery existed. My belief, and I'm not alone in this, is that the Greys were facing a species level survival crisis, genetic degradation, in an inability to reproduce naturally. And the solution, as they developed it, involved hybridization, breeding programs with humans, creating hybrid beings that carry both gray and human DNA. Is it ethical by our standards? That's a whole other conversation. But I believe it happened. I believe it's part of the story of why certain contact experiences where were what they were and why the nature of that contact has shifted over time. And second, entities that are not biological in the way we understand biology. This is going to sound strange, but stay with me. I believe there are non human entities that have been living within and on Earth itself, feeding on radiation, on geothermal energy, on forms of sustenance we don't have instrumentation sensitive enough to detect yet. Not flesh and blood creatures, something more like consciousness operating in physical matter in a very different way than we do. They have been seen by intuitives, and the knowledge of what they are doing can be confirmed by your guides. And third, this one is important to me. I believe there are benevolent entities that have been actively guarding this planet, protecting us, not from outside threats, though maybe that too, but primarily protecting us from ourselves, from our own capacity for destruction. There are researchers and channels and whistleblowers who have suggested that certain nuclear escalation events that could have ended civilization were quietly redirected, intervened upon. I find that credible, more than credible, actually. I find it consistent with what I understand about the way higher intelligences relate to developing civilizations. We are not abandoned, we are watched over. And I think more people feel that than will be willing to say it out loud. Here's something that I find genuinely fascinating from a research and pattern recognition standpoint, and I've thought about this one a lot. Abduction stories, the accounts of people being taken aboard craft, examined, returned, were a staple of UFO culture from roughly the 1960s through the late 1900s or 1990s and into the early 2000s. The names were well known: Betty and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, Whitley Strieber. These accounts were detailed, reported by people across a huge range of backgrounds, and wildly consistent in many of their core elements, despite the individuals having no contact with each other. And then they essentially stopped. Did you notice that? Think about that. In the last 20 years, the abduction narrative has largely gone quiet. We're not hearing the same kind of accounts. The contact template changed. Am I right? What stories we have in its place and what has been accelerating are the animal mutilation cases. Livestock found dead with surgical precision. No blood, no tracks, organs and tissues removed in ways that leave no tool marks and no explanation for conventional predation or decomposition. These cases are ongoing. They're documented by law enforcement and they're reported across multiple countries. So, what happened? Why the shift? Here's what I think. The hybridization programs I mentioned, if that mission reached a certain stage of completion, the need for that particular kind of direct human contact would change. The objectives evolve and the interaction model changes with it. And the animal mutilations, I believe those involve tissue and biological material collection that serves a purpose we don't fully understand yet, whether that's environmental monitoring, biological sampling, something related to how these beings track changes in Earth's ecosystems. I don't know with certainty, but the precision is not accidental. And the consistency of these cases across decades and geography is not explainable by conventional means. So the contact didn't end, the nature of it transformed. And that tells me something about intentionality. This is not random. This is a long game operation being run by intelligence that is far more patient and far more strategically sophisticated than we tend to give credit for. Now, I want to talk about Darryl Anka. I know some people personally who but this guy is well known and documented. You may have heard of him. For those who don't know him, Darryl Anka is a channel. He has been channeling an entity called Bashar since the 1980s. Bashar describes himself as a physical extraterrestrial, part of a civilization called Esasani, communicating with Darryl across time and frequency. The material that comes through is, I'm just going to say it, consistently extraordinary, philosophically deep, intentionally coherent across decades of sessions, touching on quantum physics, consciousness, parallel realities, the nature of belief systems, and yes, the relationship between humanity and extraterrestrial civilizations. I find Daryl's work credible, not because I agree with every word or take it all as literal truth, but because the quality of the intelligence coming through, the consistency over time, and the lived experience of people who apply these teachings, it speaks to something real, something that is genuinely making contact. And what Bashar has said repeatedly about this moment in human history is that we're in a transition point. The contact is not going to look like a Hollywood movie where one ship landing on the White House lawn. It's going to be gradual, relational, frequency based. The civilizations that want to make contact with us are waiting for humanity's collective vibration to reach a point where the exchange can happen with mutual benefit and without catastrophic disruption. In other words, we have to raise our frequency to meet them. And here's what strikes me about that. As a psychic medium, everything I do is about frequency, raising my vibration to make contact with consciousnesses at a higher level. That's the work, raising the vibration of the whole. That is the exact same mechanism. And so when Bashar talks about how contact happens, it maps directly into what I already know and practice. Now, I really want to address something that I think needs to be said because in intuitive circles and spiritual communities, in the metaphysical world where you'd think this conversation would be most welcome, there is a surprising amount of silence on this topic. People are afraid of being seen as crazy or met with laughter, even within a community that already operates outside the mainstream, afraid of losing credibility or afraid of the reaction. However, when someone is brave enough to bring it up, it's amazing to see the room light up. This community is highly receptive, accepting, and empowering. I'm not afraid. I've never been afraid of this or anything really anymore. And I think that silence is actually holding back the conversation we need to be having because spiritually awake people have the most relevant framework for understanding contact. We are the ones who already know that consciousness is not limited to a physical body. We're the ones who already work across dimensional lines. We are the ones who should be leading this conversation, not hiding from it. So I'm not hiding. This is me saying it out loud. Let me close with what I actually think is the most important part of this conversation. When contact becomes undeniable, and I believe it will sooner than later, there are going to be two very different responses from humanity. And both of them are completely predictable if you understand how fear works. The first group is going to be terrified, not just scared, terrified in the way that comes from having your entire worldview shattered. For people who have been told their whole lives by religion, by government, by science, by culture, that we are alone and that we are the pinnacle of creation, the arrival of undeniable non human intelligence is going to feel like a threat, an existential threat. And fear at that level does not make people thoughtful, it makes people reactive, aggressive. It makes people want to destroy what they don't understand. I've seen people online who mock any mention of extraterrestrial life, who laugh, who immediately leap to ridicule. And what I feel from them is not confidence, it's a deep, deep fear underneath the mockery. And those are the people I genuinely worry about when the time comes, because they're not going to handle it gracefully. And that worries me for the beings who arrive as much as for the humans involved. The second group, and I believe this group is growing, is going to be ready. Not just open, but ready. These are the people who have already been doing the inner work, who already understand that reality is layered, who already know that consciousness extends beyond the physical, who have already made peace with the unknown and who have no fear. They're going to be able to hold space for this transition in a way that is desperately needed. I also believe that certain extraterrestrial intelligences are going to work alongside humanity in ways that are going to be visible and practical and transformative. The bold new technologies that are coming, some of what is on the horizon in energy, healing, in material science, in communication, is not going to emerge purely from human ingenuity. We are going to be collaborating side by side with beings who have been around long enough to have solved problems we are only now beginning to understand we have. And that is not frightening to me. That's awesome. Because think about what that means. Think about what it means for this planet that has been so battered, for an ecosystem under pressure, for diseases we haven't cracked. And I believe our lives will be extended up to 120 years old at some point in the newest generation's lifespan. For energy systems still tied to extraction and combustion, help is coming, not to rescue us. We have to do our own work, but as partners, as collaborators, as in some cases, family in the truest sense of the word. So, how do you like them apples? My invitation to you today is this: get ready. Not in a survivalist way, not in a fear prep way. Get ready in a way that makes you get ready for anything meaningful. By doing your inner work, by expanding what you're willing to believe, by sitting with the discomfort of not knowing everything, by opening to the possibility that this universe is unimaginably alive and that we are not alone in it and never have been. We are part of something so much bigger than what we've been told. And the conversation is just beginning. I'll see you next time. And if this episode lit up anything in you, share it. Send it to the person in your life who's been quietly wondering. Tell a friend, leave a comment, and send suggestions to me through my website. If you would like to support the show and keep it ad-free, please buy me a coffee at sacredwhispers1111.com on the podcast page. Every cup helps keep us going. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, know that you are never alone, and keep listening to those whispers of wisdom.